and welcome to the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashani Silva. On today's episode of the Jazz Update, it's about one of the most prolific bassists in jazz, Ron Carter. He holds a Guinness World Record for the most albums recorded by an artist, 2,200 albums. He started out playing with Miles Davis in the early 60s. Over a 60-year career, he's also collaborated with other jazz greats from Eric Dolphy to Dexter Gordon to Cannonball Adderley. Some of his best works include Speak No Evil, Maiden Voyage, and Miles Smiles. He continues to tour the world today, mesmerizing audiences with his music. The bands he's led over the years include the Forsyth Quartet, the Ron Carter Nonet, and Ron Carter's Great Big Band. Ron Carter's won numerous Grammy Awards. In 1986, he won a Grammy for Call Sheet Blues, taken from a movie soundtrack. In 1993, he did it again with his Grammy for Best Jazz Instrumental Group alongside the Miles Davis Tribute Band. And in 2022, he won his third Grammy for Best Jazz Instrumental Album alongside the Skyline Trio. In 2015, he was inducted into the Guinness Book of World Records for being the most recorded jazz bassist with 2,221 recordings to his name. So that was a bit of insight into Ron Carter, his life and times and best albums. And on this week's episode of the Jazz Update, it's all about Ron Carter. Also coming up, some trending festival and album news. Stay tuned to the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashani Silva to find out more. We'll be right back after some music. And welcome back to the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashani Silva. On this week's episode, it's about jazz legend Ron Carter, a world-class bassist. He was most famous for his days with Miles Davis in the 60s. He's also led his own bands and collaborated with some of the leading names of his time. He's also performed alongside notable symphony orchestras in the world. The winner of 3 Grammy Awards. Ron Carter was born in Michigan. By age 10, he was playing the cello, then switched to bass. In 1959, he graduated in music from the Eastern School Philharmonic Orchestra. He then enrolled with the Manhattan School of Music, where he started playing alongside Eric Dolphy. He then moved to the West Coast and continued touring and performing alongside other jazz legends like Thelonious Monk and Cannonball Adderley. In 1963, he joined Miles Davis' band. Together with the Davis Band, Ron Carter helped shape the face of trumpet playing in jazz. He appears on several noteworthy albums with Davis, albums like Miles Smiles and more. His stint with Davis was instrumental in his rise to international fame as a bass player. After leading Miles Davis' band, Carter started out with his own bands. He would typically use a second bass player to keep time, and he would provide the solos. He also famously invented a musical instrument called the piccolo. This is a type of woodwind instrument like a flute. He first introduced the piccolo on an album called Blues Farm, his debut recording for CTI Records. During the 60s, he toured and performed with several noteworthy musicians like Sam Rivers, Freddie Hubbard, McCoy Tyner, Horace Silver, and others. He later became a mainstay at CTI Records. Many of his albums were leading releases on the label. In 1987, Carter won his first Grammy for an instrumental composition for the film Round Midnight. 1994, he won his second Grammy for a tribute album to Miles Davis, an album called A Tribute to Miles. Carter continues to perform and tour today. He's also a lecturer, professor emeritus at the City College of New York. He was inducted into the Downbeat Jazz Hall of Fame in 2012. There's a documentary about Ron Carter called Ron Carter Finding the Right Notes, which was aired on PBS in 2012. So that was a quick insight into Ron Carter, his biography and life and times. And this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashani Silva. We're going for a short break. We'll be right back after that. And welcome back to the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashani Silva. On this week's episode, Ron Carter, his life and times and best albums. Now for some trending album news. Taiwanese jazz pianist Yu Chen Seng has just released his debut jazz album. It's called Gratitude Voyage Embarking. The album reflects his views on everything there is to be grateful for in the world. It's an album that showcases both his experiences and unique creative style. There are 7 original compositions in the album, each one reflecting his style and experience. The tracks infuse Eastern spiritual themes with Western jazz to create a music style that's both traditional and contemporary. One of the standout tracks in the album, Guan Yin, is a very emotional and complex melody, inspired by the Buddhist deity Guan Yin. Another track, Hopscotch, was inspired by the game of hopscotch. Earworm, a catchy fast-paced melody. There's also tracks that talk about outer space and the cosmos like Outer Space, Starry Skies, and West of the Scorching Sun. For more information, please visit www.musicofyuchenseng.com. And this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashani Silva. We are going for a short break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about some of Ron Carter's best albums of all time. Stay tuned. And welcome back to the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashani Silva. On this week's episode, Ron Carter, his life and times and best albums. And on this hour, we're going to be talking about some of his best albums of all time. Here's a quick recap of some of the albums we're going to be talking about. To start off with, Carter's Grammy Award-winning album, A Tribute to Miles. This one was released in 1994. The album went on to win a Grammy for Best Jazz Instrumental Performance that year. Seven Steps to Heaven was released in 1963, so it was the early days when Carter was just starting out. This was his first recording with the Miles Davis Band. Piccolo, another amazing jazz album. This one was recorded during a live event at a club in New York City. A very energetic performance by the entire band. Spanish Blue is an album that blends jazz with Spanish themes. Two songs are straight ahead jazz, two of them are Spanish songs. And Uptown Conversation, an album that combines all kinds of styles and melodies, from groovy upbeat tracks to introspective guitar and flute trumpet duets. So that was a quick recap of what we're going to be discussing on this hour, and this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashani Silva. We're going for a short break, we'll be right back after that. Stay tuned. And welcome back to the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashani Silva. On this week's episode, it's all about Ron Carter, his life and times and best albums. And on this hour, we're going to be talking about some of his best albums of all time. To start off with, Carter's Grammy Award-winning album, A Tribute to Miles, released in 1994. This was a tribute album to the legendary Miles Davis by his former band members, pianist Herbie Hancock, saxophonist Wayne Shorter, bassist Ron Carter, and drummer Tony Williams. The album went on to win a Grammy for Best Jazz Instrumental Performance that year. The album also showcases how the bandmates have developed over time in their style and finesse. The album contains songs that were popular hits during their performances with Miles Davis, songs like So What, Little One, 81 and All Blues. Seven Steps to Heaven, the next album, was released in 1963. So it was the early days when Carter was just starting out, and he was invited to join Miles Davis Band. They started out together, and in many ways, Ron Carter was the pivot of the Miles Davis Band. He recorded this album in 1963 alongside other artists like Victor Fieldman and Frank Butler. This was his first recording with the Miles Davis Band. Piccolo is another amazing jazz album. This one was released in 1977. It was recorded during a live event at a club in New York City. This is considered an all-time popular Ron Carter album for many reasons. Mainly the live club feel, amazing musicianship. The bass playing is a standout feature in this album. Combined with Ron's unique style, it makes for some great listening. A very energetic performance by the entire band. Contains songs like Little Waltz, Sun Shower, Saguaro, and more. Spanish Blue is an album that blends jazz with Spanish themes. There's a lot of talent on this record. Ron Carter's on guitar, Roland Hanna with his flute music are exceptional here. Carter was inspired to create an album full of Spanish-themed songs during a tour of Spain with the Miles Davis Quintet. So this album was released in 1975, contains 4 tunes all in all. 3 of them original compositions by Carter. There's also a Miles Davis hit. 2 songs are straight-ahead jazz, 2 of them are Spanish songs. And Uptown Conversation. This album brings out the individual talents of the Ron Carter Band. For instance, the track In Band Strasse showcases Herbie Hancock at his finest. Billy Cobham is excellent on drums. So this was one of the coolest hard bop albums of its time. All the tracks are original compositions by Carter. There's all kinds of styles and melodies here, from groovy upbeat tracks like the opening track Uptown Conversation to introspective guitar duets like the song 10 Strings, or groundbreaking flute and trumpet duets like the song Sorcerer. So that was a quick insight into some of Ron Carter's best albums of all time, and this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashani Silva. We're going for a short break, we'll be right back after that. And welcome back to the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashani Silva. On this week's episode, Ron Carter, his life and times and best albums. Now for some trending album news. There's a new album up for grabs. It's called In the Autumn Years and it's released on Soaring Music Publications. The title track of the album is being released next Monday. The melody was actually written by Charles Nathan in 1953. It was originally meant to be recorded by the legendary Nat King Cole for one of his albums, but it was overlooked. Many years later, the song is now being released as a piano solo. So it's a great chance to listen to a vintage hit blending jazz and classical music performed on piano. So starting Monday, the track will be available for listening on streaming platforms. You can also purchase the entire album on Soaring Music Publications. For more information, please visit www.soaringmusicpublications.com. So that was some trending album news on the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashani Silva. We're going for a short break. We'll be right back after that. When we come back, we're going to be talking about more of Ron Carter's best albums of all time. Stay tuned.